Welcome in, everyone. We are thrilled you could join us today.
Absolutely, it's great to be here.
And, if you are a learner who regularly navigates the shifting currents of technology, business, and culture, well, you are in the right place.
Yeah, you really are.
Our mission for today's deep dive is to unpack a stack of your curated sources to really understand a massive structural shift in the modern workplace. We are moving way beyond those theoretical, debates about artificial intelligence.
Right, the sci-fi stuff.
Exactly. We're looking directly at its rapid transition from what was basically a niche technical skill into a mandatory gatekeeper of professional opportunity.
It's happening fast.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we have a robust stack of materials to guide this analysis today. Our primary text is Johan Steyn's article, Bridging the AI Divide, Literacy as the New Gatekeeper.
Yeah, it's a great piece.
It is. And to ground Steyn's thesis in hard data, we will cross-reference his work with the LinkedIn Skills on the Rise 2026 report, some financial reporting from Reuters on Microsoft's early 2026 earnings, and research from Google and Ipsos that was reported via IT Web.
We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We do. We are also factoring in organizational strategies from IT Pro regarding Lloyd's Banking Group and some societal analysis from The Guardian on what they are calling Generation AI.
Which is such a fascinating term, and we are deliberately stepping away from the generalized kind of sci-fi adjacent panic about automation today. The sources you provided point toward a much more immediate and grounded reality.
Yeah.
We were looking analytically at how this technology intersects with human opportunity, with education systems, and corporate policy.
The real-world impact.
Precisely. The data shows a widening gap between those who can strategically leverage these systems within enterprise environments and those who are structurally or culturally prevented from doing so.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Johan Steyn zeroes in on the LinkedIn Skills on the Rise 2026 report, and he explicitly calls the data a warning flare.
A warning flare, yeah.
When you look at the raw numbers, the trajectory is hard to ignore. The skills experiencing exponential growth, they aren't about building underlying models or doing basic Python coding anymore.
No, the demand has shifted.
Right. The demand is surging for strategic business applications. The market is aggressively hunting for professionals who understand advanced prompt engineering, contextual grounding, and the orchestration of complex workflows using large language models.
It's moved out of the lab.
Yes. This capability has firmly exited the IT department and is now a baseline requirement in the boardroom, in marketing, in operations.
And the financial markets are reflecting that exact same reality. If we look at the Reuters report on Microsoft's early 2026 earnings, the momentum isn't just speculative hype anymore.
Right, it's not just buzzwords.
Exactly. It is deeply embedded enterprise revenue. The report highlights massive growth in the adoption and daily active usage of Copilot across the whole Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
Which is huge.
It is. And this data point is critical because it tells us the why behind the LinkedIn skill shift. Organizations are not just experimenting in sandboxes anymore. The biggest tech companies have positioned AI as a standard global layer of productivity.
Which fundamentally changes the day-to-day reality for you, the listener. We are no longer talking about using a public chatbot to draft a simple email.
Right.
We are looking at professional workflows where you might need to synthesize a 100-page financial PDF, cross-reference it with a live proprietary database, and generate a compliance summary tailored to a specific client profile in minutes.
All integrated into one workflow.
Exactly. And if you are still attempting to manage that kind of multimodal, data-heavy workflow manually, the gap in your output velocity compared to a colleague using integrated AI tools, well, it becomes an insurmountable competitive disadvantage.
An insurmountable disadvantage. That workflow integration represents a complete paradigm shift in professional expectations. And that brings us directly to Steyn's central argument.
Yeah, let's get into that.
The market is demanding a capability that goes far beyond simply knowing which buttons to click in a software interface.
Right. Steyn argues that true AI literacy is fundamentally a cognitive skill, not a technical one. It is a severe miscalculation to treat these systems like a traditional search engine or a piece of static software.
What's fascinating here is Steyn's definition of AI literacy as a modern form of judgment.
I love that phrase.
It's so accurate.
Yeah.
When you think about how large language models actually function through probabilistic token generation, they are not retrieving facts from a database.
They aren't looking things up.
No. They are mathematically predicting the next most likely word in a sequence based on vast training data. And because of this architecture, They are highly prone to hallucination. So a modern form of judgment requires the sharp, critical eye necessary to spot what Steyn accurately terms confident nonsense. The model will produce a factually incorrect analysis with absolute, unwavering grammatical certainty.
Which explains why it sounds so authoritative. Even when the underlying logic is fundamentally flawed, it is optimizing for linguistic patterns, not factual accuracy.
Exactly. And that means the human operator's role shifts from content creation to content verification and strategic direction.
You're steering the ship.
Yes. The core competency is knowing how to structure a highly constrained, context-rich inquiry. It's rigorously testing the model's output against known variables and utilizing the speed of the machine without ever outsourcing your own professional accountability.
You are still on the hook for the final product.
You remain the liable party. The AI is a utility. The judgment is entirely yours.
I want to pause here and ask you, the listener, what stands out to you when evaluating your own workflow against this concept of modern judgment?
It's a great question to reflect on.
Are you actively stress testing the outputs you receive from these models, or are the time-saving benefits tempting you to accept confident nonsense at face value? It requires a significant recalibration of how we approach problem solving in a professional setting.
It really does. And because mastering this modern judgment requires continuous interaction with the technology, it introduces structural inequalities. Steyn's piece highlights how this transition is fracturing the workforce.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources do not describe a single unified skills gap. They identify two distinct, actively widening divides. Let's look at the first one, which is entirely about resources.
Okay.
The prerequisite for developing this modern judgment is access. Having premium enterprise-grade devices, stable, high-bandwidth connectivity, dedicated time within the workday to experiment, and leadership that actively supports that experimentation.
All of which costs money and time.
Exactly. All of these factors create a compounded advantage. Professionals lacking those specific conditions fall behind, not due to a lack of intellect, but simply because they are denied the sandbox required to practice.
We can observe the mechanics of this resource divide very clearly in the data from ITWeb, which detailed research by Google and Ipsos in South Africa.
That was a revealing study.
It really was. The statistics reveal a massive societal appetite. 70% of South African adults report having used an AI chatbot, and an overwhelming 90% express a desire to learn more.
Wow.
The curiosity and the recognition of the technology's importance are universally present.
A 90% appetite is staggering. It shows an acute public awareness that this is the new baseline for economic participation.
Yet, we have to contrast that appetite with the infrastructural reality. In an economy where severe inequality already dictates access to hardware and data, interacting with a free public chatbot on a mobile device does not translate to enterprise-level AI literacy.
Right, it's not the same skill set at all.
It's not. It doesn't teach a worker how to securely query a proprietary corporate data set using an integrated enterprise copilot. If this gap is left unaddressed, AI functions as what the sources call a quiet filter.
A quiet filter.
Yes. It subtly bakes a new layer of systemic exclusion into hiring pipelines, promotions, and overall economic mobility, filtering out individuals who simply never had access to the necessary corporate infrastructure.
The quiet filter is such a powerful concept. It isn't overt discrimination. It's an algorithmic preference for those who are well-resourced enough to adapt early.
Exactly.
But the sources also identify a second divide that actually has nothing to do with hardware or internet access. It is an internal corporate divide driven entirely by culture and fear.
This is a big one.
We are seeing a stark contrast between organizations that provide safe, sanctioned environments for AI training and those where employees are left to navigate the technology in the dark.
This is particularly prevalent in heavily regulated sectors. Think finance, legal, healthcare. When the corporate posture is purely restrictive, fear becomes the primary barrier to adoption.
People are scared to make a mistake?
Legitimately so. Employees are concerned about the repercussions of putting sensitive client data into public models. They are worried about generating compliance violations based on the confident nonsense we discussed earlier.
If cautious rule-following employees are penalized by their own compliance standards, doesn't that inherently incentivize what the industry calls shadow AI?
That's exactly what happens.
You end up with a scenario where employees secretly use public AI tools on their personal devices just to keep up with the productivity demands, which creates an infinitely larger security risk for the company.
That is the ultimate corporate catch-22. Without clear, proactive governance, you create a toxic divergence in your workforce.
How so?
Well, you might have a meticulous, highly capable analyst terrified to use an AI tool because of vague data privacy policies. Meanwhile, a less experienced colleague secretly uses a public model to automate half their workload,
Yeah.
appearing vastly more productive to management.
Oh, wow.
So the cautious worker, the exact person whose modern judgment you want leading this transition, becomes professionally disadvantaged simply for protecting the firm.
So what does this all mean? We need to pivot from identifying the structural problems to analyzing the practical solutions outlined in your sources. How do organizations and individuals actually bridge these two divides?
There are frameworks emerging.
Let's look at the strategy from Lloyd's Banking Group, detailed in IT Pro. Operating in one of the most heavily regulated financial environments in the world, they recognize the dangers of shadow AI and the resource divide.
They tackled it head-on.
They did. Instead of a piecemeal rollout just to executives, they are constructing a comprehensive internal academy. They are actively training their entire workforce, tailoring specific curricula to different tiers of responsibility.
It's a holistic approach.
Yeah. They are providing the enterprise tools, defining the boundaries of responsible use, and systematically teaching that modern judgment in a secure, compliant environment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Lloyd's Banking Group framework provides actionable implications for three distinct societal pillars navigating this transition.
Okay, let's break those down.
First, for business leaders. The data suggests that a passive approach to AI integration is an active decision to reward the already advantaged.
Right. Doing nothing is doing something.
Exactly. Leaving adoption to organic experimentation inevitably favors employees with the resources to buy premium subscriptions and the risk tolerance to use them.
So what's the mandate?
The mandate for leadership is to provide equitable access to enterprise-grade models, allocate paid hours for skill development, and establish explicit guidelines that bring AI usage out of the shadows and into standard operating procedure.
The second group Steyn points to is policymakers. The implication here is that AI literacy has evolved past the point of being a niche curriculum update. It must be treated as critical national competitiveness infrastructure.
It's macroeconomic at this point.
It is. If a nation's workforce cannot interface with the global standard of automated productivity, that economy will face a severe friction penalty on the world stage.
Which leads directly to the third pillar, educators and parents. The Guardian's analysis of Generation AI frames this with appropriate urgency.
Yes, the education piece is huge.
There is a deep concern that children who do not master these systems will be fundamentally disempowered in a society increasingly governed by automated decision-making.
And the necessary educational shift here really mirrors the transition from human calculators to electronic spreadsheets back in the 1980s.
That's a perfect analogy.
The spreadsheet didn't eliminate the accounting profession. It eliminated the accountant who refused to use Excel. But, and this is the key part, you still had to teach the underlying mathematics to know if the spreadsheet was outputting the correct financial model.
Exactly. That is the precise analytical framing required for education today. Teaching a student how to prompt a chatbot for an essay is not literacy. It is mere operational utility.
It's just pushing a button.
Right. True education in this era must focus on systemic comprehension. Students need to understand the mechanics of how models are trained, the biases inherent in the data, the probabilistic nature of the outputs, and how automated systems can be leveraged to mislead.
Critical thinking.
AI must be interrogated as complex infrastructure, not blindly trusted as an oracle.
So as we pull the threads of this deep dive together, the core narrative from Steyn, reinforced by the market data from Microsoft and LinkedIn, is unequivocally clear. AI literacy is no longer an auxiliary skill. It is the new baseline capability for the modern knowledge worker.
New baseline.
And historical patterns tell us that baseline capabilities swiftly solidify into strict gatekeepers.
They always do.
The path forward requires deliberate action to prevent the quiet filter from baking deeper inequalities into our systems. It demands equitable access to tools, organizational cultures that replace fear with structured training and modern judgment, and an educational paradigm that prioritizes critical thinking over blind automation.
This raises an important question, and it's a dynamic I really want to leave you to mull over.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We have spent this deep dive emphasizing the need for modern judgment to spot confident nonsense. But as these models scale and refine, the hallucination rates will drop. The errors will become incredibly subtle.
Right, they're getting better every day.
So if we reach a point where AI systems are seamlessly integrated into our enterprise workflows and they are accurate 99% of the time, what happens to human vigilance?
That is a scary thought.
Will the ultimate premium professional skill of the future actually be sheer cognitive stamina? The mental endurance required to painstakingly double-check a machine that almost never makes a mistake. As the outsourcing of our analytical thinking becomes frictionless, will the most highly sought-after employees simply be those who possess the stubborn stamina to keep thinking for themselves?
The stamina to resist cognitive offloading when the technology makes it effortless, that is a vital lens through which to view the future of our own workflows.
It changes how you see your daily tasks.
It really does. To our listener, thank you for providing such a rich, complex stack of sources for today's analysis. Navigating this transition requires exactly this kind of rigorous, multifaceted examination. Keep exploring the data, keep challenging the systems you interact with, and continue exercising that crucial modern judgment. Until next time.